He played over 700 games for Leeds United. He wore the shirt for 18 years, played in nearly every position, defender, midfielder, even up front. And not once did he ever ask for the spotlight. They called him the Rolls-Royce of footballers, smooth, unshakable, elegant in silence. But Paul Madeley didn't care for nicknames. He didn't care for fame. He cared about the badge on his chest and the job he was asked to do. No tantrums when he was benched, no interviews demanding credit. Just boots laced, head down. "Where do you need me, boss?" He said yes when others hesitated, and said nothing when others shouted. This is not the story of a football celebrity. This is the story of a servant to the game, a man who did it all and asked for nothing in return. Subscribe if you believe football should honor the names who never screamed to be remembered, because Paul Madeley never needed headlines to be great. He just needed a team, and he gave them everything. Paul Edward Madeley was born on September 20th, 1944, in Beeston, Leeds, just minutes from the stadium that would one day chant his name. He wasn't born into football royalty. There were no agents, no academies, no scouts in suits, just a Yorkshire boy with rolled-up sleeves and a quiet fire behind his eyes. In 1962, at just 17 years old, he signed for Leeds United, the club he had watched from the stands. No transfer saga, no headline deal, just a local lad chasing a dream. And once he arrived, he never left. 18 years, one club, one badge, one heartbeat. In an era before loyalty became a PR stunt, Paul Madeley made it a way of life. He didn't crave adventure, didn't need a new challenge. Leeds was enough. Because for Paul, football wasn't about the brand, it was about the team. And that team would come to lean on him more than they ever imagined. There are footballers who shine in one position. Then there was Paul Madeley, who shined everywhere. Across 18 seasons at Leeds, he played in every outfield position, right back, centre-back, midfield, even striker. The only place he didn't stand was in goal. 727 appearances. Not one position owned him, but every role trusted him. He didn't just fill in, he elevated the game wherever he played. And never once did he ask to play somewhere else. Don Revie, the legendary Leeds manager, once said, "He was the most unselfish player I ever worked with." When others hesitated, Madeley nodded. When a teammate fell, he stepped in. When Leeds needed cover, they called him. And he answered every time. No fuss, no ego, just loyalty, dressed in boots. That's why he wasn't just a teammate. He was the teammate, the one every manager dreams of, but few ever find. In the heart of one of football's most dominant teams, Paul Madeley wasn't the face, he was the spine. Under Don Revie, Leeds United rose from second-tier battlers to one of the most feared and respected clubs in Europe. And through it all, Madeley was there. 2 First Division titles, 1968-69, 1973-74, an FA Cup in 1972, a League Cup in 1968, 2 Intercities Fairs Cups, 1968, and 1 971. Even the Charity Shield in 1969. But Paul didn't just lift trophies, he stood firm in the heartbreak too. The 1973 FA Cup final loss. The infamous 1975 European Cup final against Bayern Munich, a game still shadowed by refereeing scandal and fury. He played in every major final Leeds reached. Not as a passenger, but as the player Revie could plug in anywhere and trust with everything. He didn't just support Leeds in big games, he was on the pitch for every one of them. Win or lose, Madeley was there. While others chased the front page, he became the page nobody turned, but the one every great chapter was built on. Between 1971 and 1977, Paul Madeley earned 24 caps for England. No goals, no headlines, no trademark celebration. Just the same steady rhythm, solid, intelligent, dependable. He was called up to the squad for the 1970 World Cup. And what did he do? He turned it down. I don't want to take the place of someone who might actually play. Who else says that? Who walks away from the biggest stage in world football out of respect for others? Don Revie, who had trusted him at Leeds, trusted him again at England. And Madeley showed up like he always did. Versatile, quiet, undeniably reliable. He never got a testimonial, never got the hero's farewell. And somehow, he never seemed to mind. Under Revie's trust, he answered England's call quietly. No caps parades, no goal celebrations, just the same man doing the job without fuss. That was Paul. Even at the highest level, he remained grounded, unseen, and unshakable. In over 400 competitive matches, Paul Madeley was never booked, not once. No yellow cards, no red, no fouls with malice, no moments of ego-fueled rage. In an era defined by rough tackles, elbows, and crunching midfield duels, he played the game without ever losing his head. Even referees spoke of him with quiet admiration. They knew who he was. They knew he didn't need a warning. He just played. With calm, with control, with a quiet grace that made aggression look unnecessary. He didn't need to shout or shove. His game spoke for him. That's why teammates trusted him, why opponents respected him, and why fans still speak of him as something football rarely sees now, a gentleman in boots. Proof that true strength doesn't roar. It just shows up and plays beautifully. In 1980, at the age of 36, Paul Madeley hung up his boots. There was no press conference, no testimonial, no parade of former teammates or chants from the terraces. He was offered a contract extension, but he turned it down. Why? To care for his ill wife, Anne. No drama, no farewell tour, just the quiet decision of a man who knew his work was done and that his greatest role was waiting off the pitch. He returned to Leeds, not as a pundit, not as a football figurehead, but to run his family's DIY business, serving customers the same way he served teammates, with quiet kindness, with no need for applause. Fame didn't call him back. And Paul? He didn't miss it, because he didn't need cameras to know who he was. He had already built his legacy, in tackles, in passes, and in 18 years of saying, "Yes, I'll play." In the years after football, Paul Madeley lived as he always had, out of the headlines, close to home, quiet in his strength. But life had one more opponent waiting. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a cruel illness, one that chips away slowly, without fanfare, and without mercy. But Paul didn't announce it. He didn't write a book. He didn't tour the media for sympathy. He simply carried it, the way he had carried Leeds for 2 decades, with quiet courage, with grace, with no complaint. On July 23, 2018, he passed away, aged 73, surrounded by family, and remembered by all who truly knew the game. There were no statues, no blockbuster documentaries, but there were tributes from legends, from managers, players, fans, because those who understood what he gave knew how much football had lost. Even in death, Paul Madeley stayed true to himself, a man who never asked for anything, but left behind everything that mattered. He didn't score wonder goals. He didn't chase headlines. He didn't need a brand deal, a catchphrase, or a statue. Paul Madeley played every role on the pitch, but he never played for himself. He said yes when others said no. He stepped in when others stepped back. He served, supported, adapted, and he did it all without asking for a single thing in return. In a game that often glorifies ego, he became the gold standard of humility. He never had a brand deal, never courted headlines, but for every young footballer who wants to know what greatness looks like, they should start with Paul Madeley. He was Leeds United through and through, the man every manager prayed for, the player every teammate respected, the professional every fan could be proud of. He didn't leave the game with fireworks, but he left it better than he found it. Subscribe if you believe we should still honor the ones who served quietly, the ones who never asked to be remembered, but gave us every reason to never forget. Paul Madeley, the footballer who never said no, and never needed to, because his actions spoke louder than any words ever could.